I'll be honest with you, this whole thing started with a smell, pine needles, old dust, and that razor, sharp mountain air. You only get up high where the wind feels like it could slice glass. I hadn't breathed that in for years, not since I was a kid spending summers with my uncle out in these hills. Back then, his place was a wreck in slow motion. Shingles dropping like teeth, windows cracked, hinges hanging by a thread. When I finally got the deed 15 years later, after buying it at a county auction for less than the price of a used truck, I figured I'd be walking into the same kind of ruin. And honestly, that's what I wanted. My ruin, my project, my piece of silence in the woods where no homeowners association or nosy neighbor could tell me what shade of brown I was allowed to paint my porch. So picture me gripping the steering wheel a little too hard, gravel crunching under the tires, my contractor and site engineer riding shotgun like it was just another Tuesday. But it wasn't another Tuesday for me. This was supposed to be the day I saw the old house again, the place I was going to fix up with my own hands. Only when we rounded the bend and the trees opened up, I slammed the brakes so hard my coffee nearly painted the dashboard. The house, my house, was freshly painted sage green with brand new windows gleaming in the sun, shingles straight as a ruler, a garbage bin marked with a fancy HOA logo parked at the curb like it had always belonged there. And on the porch, a pair of muddy boots neatly placed by the door. I felt my jaw tighten. My contractor muttered, "You sure this is the right place?" And all I could think was, "Buddy, I've got the deed in my glove box." So we walked up, cautious, like the house itself might bite. The porch didn't even creak. It had been reinforced. The door? Unlocked. Inside smelled of fresh drywall and new paint, furniture arranged like a magazine spread. A mug half, full of coffee, still sat on the table, and I swear I heard the hum of a refrigerator. Then came footsteps. Out walked a couple, early 20s, relaxed as if we were the intruders. The guy said, "Can we help you?" with the tone of someone who pays rent on time. I told him flat, "Yeah, you can. I own this house." He blinked, shook his head, and said, "No, sorry, that's not possible. We signed a lease through the Valley Ridge HOA." He even pulled out his phone and showed me paperwork, leases, bills, internet service, all under some outfit called Meadowstone Development Trust. I was still processing that when I called the sheriff. 40 minutes later, they pulled up, looked over my deed, the auction records, my permits. Everything was clean. They escorted the couple out, who looked genuinely heartbroken, swearing they'd paid deposits and rent and had no idea they were living in a scam. And as they were being driven away, the girl turned back and asked me, "If this isn't HOA property, then who gave us the keys?" That question still sticks with me because moments later, the answer arrived in the form of a black SUV with tinted windows and branding on the side that screamed corporate power. Out stormed a woman. Perfect bob haircut, sunglasses sharp enough to cut steel, clipboard clutched like a weapon. She didn't even introduce herself politely. She pointed right at me and barked, "Who authorized the removal of my tenants?" I told her slow and steady, "Under the authority of me. I own this house." She snapped back, "Impossible. This is HOA property." It was listed as unoccupied land in the 2023 alignment plan. I held out my deed. She snatched it, barely skimmed it, then scoffed loud enough for the deputies to hear. "Could be forged," she said. The deputies weren't impressed. They confirmed it was mine, no HOA jurisdiction. Her name was Linda Carver, president of Valley Ridge Estates, and she was already on her phone, pacing like she was orchestrating an army. She threw out words like lawsuit, liability, and tenant rights with the confidence of someone who'd been bullying neighbors for years. And that's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was stepping into a war. The next morning, I went down to the county records office, sleep, deprived and angry. And sure enough, I found something that turned my stomach. An overlay map, slick and digital, filed just last year, showing my land absorbed into HOA territory under something called a Greenbelt Rehabilitation Sector. Fancy words for "we're pretending this is ours now." A retired surveyor named Ed Lane, gruff old guy with more maps than furniture in his house, took one look and said, "That's not a mistake. That's fraud. Somebody reclassified your land without hearings, without permits." They just redrew the lines and counted on nobody noticing. It made sense. My house had sat abandoned for years, the perfect target. And once I started talking to locals, more stories came out. Cheryl, an older woman who'd lived in the HOA for decades, told me her cousin came back from overseas to find strangers living in his home, all thanks to fake leases run through the same Meadowstone trust. Another guy told me his house got bulldozed while he was abroad, declared unfit for rehab by the HOA, and he never managed to fight them in court. Every story had the same villain, Linda and her network, laundering property rights through fake paperwork and shell companies. That's when I brought in a lawyer, Emily Cortez, sharp as nails and twice as blunt. She flipped through the fraudulent leases and said, "This isn't overreach. This is organized theft." She dug deeper and found that Meadowstone Development was a hollow shell tied to a UPS box in Aspen, and its trustee was none other than Linda's niece. They weren't just stealing homes. They were laundering money through leases, insurance, and fake development projects. Of course, Linda didn't back down. She hit me with a lawsuit claiming I'd illegally evicted tenants, cost the HOA rental revenue, even demanded demolition of my unauthorized structure. Imagine reading a court filing that says your own home should be torn down. My lawyer laughed and said, "Good. It means they're scared." From there, things escalated. Linda started sending so-called compliance officers to my land, clipboard warriors writing up violations like non-compliant fencing and soil modification. I caught them measuring my porch one morning and told them if they weren't measuring for caskets, they'd better leave. They slapped a bright orange violation notice on my door before scurrying off. Meanwhile, Linda held a community meeting painting me as a squatter and a threat to property values, plastering flyers with my face around town. It would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. But the real break came from a whistleblower, an anonymous email tipping me off to check the HOA's insurance policy. Turns out Linda had filed a $1.2 million claim for storm damage on my house. The photos were from before I ever touched the place, proof they had inside access to county inspections. That was the crack in the dam. Once regulators dug in, everything spilled out. Fake maps, fraudulent leases, bogus insurance claims. The feds came knocking, and Linda couldn't clip her way out of that mess. She was arrested right at the HOA gate, screaming about her rights while deputies hauled her off in cuffs. The court ruled decisively. My land was never part of the HOA. All their leases were null and void, and Linda was personally liable for damages. The HOA itself was dissolved, placed under state trusteeship, and Linda, she's serving time for fraud. But the real victory wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the moment I stood on my porch months later, at a barbecue with neighbors who'd been burned by her too. Cheryl brought cornbread. Someone baked a cake shaped like a log cabin with a little plastic Linda peeking out the window, and even the sheriff dropped by for a beer. For the first time, it felt like my house wasn't just mine. It was a symbol that you don't let bullies with clipboards rewrite reality. That night, I hammered in a sign at the edge of my property. Weatherproof, bold letters, private property, not affiliated with any HOA. If your name is Linda, turn around. Everyone laughed, but to me it wasn't just a joke. It was closure. And yet, as satisfying as it felt, I couldn't shake one thought. If Linda had gotten away with this for years, how many other people lost homes without even realizing the paperwork had been faked out from under them? How many folks just gave up because they didn't have the time, the money, or the fight left in them? So now I want to ask you, what do you think? Was justice really served here? Or did Linda get off light for the damage she caused? And where do we draw the line between community management and outright corruption? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear how you'd have handled it, because this wasn't just my fight, it's so meeting that could happen to anyone who thinks they're safe on their own land. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, you already know sometimes the scariest battles aren't fought in court, but on your own front porch.